Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Yay! A round of applause! Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for coming on this rainy and a little bit sunny day. So, just a wee introduction to what we are going to be doing today. So, as we opened this demonstration, we will be doing speeches about Ukraine and sharing resources. So I'm gonna start today with a little update on the situation. So firstly, today is the 17th day of war in Ukraine. On Friday, Russian airstrikes hit 3 Ukraine cities: Lutsk, Ivano-Frankivsk, and Dnipro. Putin's forces are still trying to block Kyiv, and they have taken out Ukrainian defenses west and north to Kyiv. Poland have taken in around 1.5 million of refugees. Estonia 7,000, Latvia 4,300. UN informs that since 9th of March, Hungary has taken in 214,000, Slovakia 165, Romania 85,000, and Moldova 83,000. UK 50. 5 days ago, UK granted visas for 50 Ukrainian refugees. That is 1% of the 5,500 people who have applied. Now the number of applications will be much higher, of course. The city of Mariupol is still being heavily attacked. Thousands of civilians are still trapped in the city. The people there have no access to phone networks, and food and water are running out. Ukraine's authorities have been trying to send aid to people of Mariupol and evacuate them to Zaporizhia. However, these peaceful humanitarian corridors filled with fleeing families and food and water for Mariupol's people have been targeted by heavy Russian shelling. Zelensky, Ukraine's president, says that Putin wants to keep Mariupol hostage. And honestly, he is. By killing completely innocent civilians, lone mothers, elderly, are trying to stop any kind of aid going to Mariupol's people who are unable to evacuate. On Friday, it was estimated that around 1,207 people have been killed in Mariupol. However, this number is not final, as many could be buried under the debris. Ukraine's government has announced that Russia might be trying to attack Chernobyl's power plant and position it as Ukraine's actions. Now I have a wee question to Putin. Why Ukraine would ever attack their own power plant and risk the lives of their already suffering nation? No one knows, only Putin. On Friday, Ukraine surveillance as well announced that Russia has fired at a peaceful Belarusian town next to the border. Ukraine's government thinks that this may be Russia trying to involve Belarus into war against Ukraine. To add to this, Russia has agreed to give Belarus lethal weapons. Putin's attack on all Ukraine's anatomical mechanisms is going further. I believe you know that they have already seized the biggest power plant in Ukraine, which is the biggest one in Europe, 10 times bigger than Chernobyl. After that, they have attacked the University of Physics and Technology in Kharkiv. The university has been working on an experimental nuclear reactor, and luckily the reactor has been completely shut off, but Russian forces still attacked it. Now, a little word about Russian propaganda, what is happening right now. Well, at the moment, Russia's ambassador in the UN Vasilina Benzaya, is saying that Ukraine and the US have a secret plot to set biological weapons and attack Europe. How you might think would be this done? So they are saying that Ukraine is infecting migratory birds, bats, and insects. The US ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, answered to this that the intent behind these lies seem clear. Putin is trying to justify his war, and of course, he is very not succeeding. So in Putin's eyes, Ukraine is the ultimate, all-powerful war goddess, like a beautiful Disney princess, beautiful but lethal, in possession of all birds and insects, trying to wage war on the world. So I have a question for Putin. Why would Ukraine do this to their possible future allies and companions? Ukraine has been trying to get into UN and NATO for some time. Why would they hurt themselves like this? Well, let's hope that Putin will answer, but he might not because he is too busy strapping grenades to pigeons. UK Home Office is still proving their complete professional inadequacy with the refugee situation. For example, the generous proposition to open the border to Ukrainians that are immediate family members of UK nationals don't actually ease the process of entering the country. It does not mean that entry is visa-free. It only means that they need a special kind of visa. And as BBC reports, the first family that applied already did not meet the criteria. For example, if you want to issue that special kind of visa to your child, you need the consent of both of the parents. As I hope most of you know, Ukraine issued, when the war started, Ukraine issued a law that men capable of fighting cannot leave the country because they need to be fighting and protecting everything that's, in Ukraine's possessions. So, obviously, these fathers who are fighting cannot give consent because who are fleeing are the lone mothers. They are the ones who are crossing the border, waiting in Poland to get a UK visa. Their husbands are back in Ukraine, fighting Russians, Putin soldiers. So I think this is a perfect example how Home Office not only does not absolutely know Ukraine's situation and what Ukraine needs, but as well they don't have even the smallest amount of decency to look into how to make this policy possible, how to make this policy work and help Ukrainians. Some say that Home Office is trying to keep the security of the country and control of the border. And I am sure that none of us disagree that these are bad things. We all know that certain background checks need to be done and security is important. However, most, if not all, Ukrainian refugees are elderly and lone mothers with little kids. What Boris thinks these people are gonna do? Does he think that these babies gonna enter the country and spy on the government? Like, what does he think is gonna happen? Another argument is that this situation is very special and it has never happened before. And it's very, very confusing and very complicated. That's why we need to take time, yes? Now I think for this answer, let's take a lesson from history. Similar process happened with Syria. UK has offered 20,000 Syrian refugees a place in UK, however, over 5 years. Over 5 years, only 20,000 people were allowed to enter and settle in UK after fleeing war. Syria is a country of 17.5 million people, and they have been in war for 10 years. Now, I'm not saying that political situation of Syria and Ukraine is similar, but what is similar is UK's complete inadequacy in forming refugee policies. Policies that are supposed to aid these people fleeing war. Of course, in the case of Syria, there were other aspects too. The Home Office condemned people fleeing war and illegally entering by boat, but welcomed those who would come through legal channels, apply for settlement, etc. These resettlement schemes, as Patel, the infamous Patel, said, they have taken years to actually let people in the country. Some families some Syrian families were and still are homeless because they are waiting for these resettlement schemes to be activated. So what does this show to us? Well, it actually shows us that Home Office does not give a single flying shit about human life and refugees' well-being. What it shows us is that we need to make so much noise about this that they are not going to be able to cross the street from their house without being criticized about this. We need to talk about this until they're not able to open a paper and not see people raging over this. Because the bottom line is that we cannot let them do the same with Ukraine. We cannot let them to say and give all of these beautiful promises and actually never achieving the goal. I don't know if many of you have seen it, but there are filmed footage of refugees, Ukrainian refugees in Poland, literally standing outside the UK's embassy waiting to be let in. And the embassy is literally leaving them out in the cold. They're not opening the doors for them. What kind of life is this? What kind of country are we? Now, a little point from me. This is the last thing, I promise. So I am Lithuanian, and March the 16th is our day of independence. Independence from what, you may ask? If you do not know, it is independence from Soviet Union. It marks the day when other occupied countries by Soviets, as well as Lithuania, were able to fight out their freedom. How did we fight, you may ask? Well, it is called the Singing Revolution. People knew that the only way for them to show that they need their freedom and that Russia and Russia's then Soviet regime is the aggressor was to come to streets completely unarmed and sing Lithuanian folk songs and be crushed by Russian tanks because they saw singing as an aggressive act. We are able to celebrate this day, but I want to tell you that we are fighting here that Ukraine would be able to celebrate this day. Let's make Ukraine's Independence Day tomorrow, the day after. This is what we are fighting for. This is what we're standing and protesting for in any kind of weather. Because our only problem is to standing an hour or two in cold. Their problem is that their nation is being completely terrorized. Their problem is that one of the biggest countries in the world and its head, Mr. Putin, is trying to annihilate a whole nation. A nation that has been independent, democratic, and sovereign for a long time. A nation that has their own culture, their own language, their own spirit. And we just need to stand for this. And we need to make people hear that UK and Scotland, we need to do better. We need to make them hear that the policies that they're offering are nothing. That, Boris, he should feel ashamed of saying Slava Ukraini in the start of his speech when he approves policies like that only lets 50 people in the country. Safety is a human right, but it is as well a responsibility. It is our responsibility to give safety to others, especially now, especially when we see a totalitarian regime, Putin's regime, that wants to eat up a democratic nation. It is not only about Ukraine. It has never been only about Ukraine. It's about all of us and how we are being controlled by our fear and by him. Thank you, guys. Slava Ukraini!